Admiral Isaac Punts, commander of the SEC Upset Watch. If you're hearing this message, the SEC has fallen. Long live college football, but the SEC has fallen.
This is Alabama, and may have dealt their postseason dreams a fatal blow tonight.
As we enter another great college game day environment, I'm sitting here watching Indiana get its wheels blown off by the Ohio State, cheering on to the fact that another fraudulent Big Ten school will get knocked out of my glorious playoff picture, meant to be a showcase proving how powerful the SEC truly is in its final form. Now sure, has it been a bit of a rough year leading up to this point? Of course. I mean, Alabama and Georgia started off as strong as we knew they would be, and the behemoths met in an absolute thriller of a showcase that seemed to take the wind a bit out of both sides, as later Alabama would uncharacteristically drop a game to Vanderbilt, who turned out to actually be a decent team this year, and then later dropped another one to a strong Tennessee team. So while they are in one of their rare 2-loss seasons, they immediately came back out and stomped Mizzou and LSU to prove they still had their dominance. And up at the top with them were the likes of Texas, who only lost by 15 points to Georgia, and Georgia themselves, who are also a 2-loss team. Like I said, this was a strange year here in the Southeast Conference, but Georgia's 2 losses were to Alabama and Ole Miss, and sure, Ole Miss beat them by 18 points, but this is a ranked SEC team, and our ranks are just that deep, right? I mean, look at Ole Miss. They had only lost games to top 15 LSU and Kentucky. Okay, so in hindsight, the SEC might be a bit of a house of cards. Almost all ranked teams had multiple losses, some of which were absolutely ugly, but there was at least a well-defined top and bottom half, right? Like a real pecking order. You had your Texas A&Ms, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, and Missouri's all in the top 25, held up there by some amount of win trading between those teams, each giving each other a quality win or loss. Like Missouri, who had no quality wins really, but had gotten blown out by Texas A&M and Alabama, and also lost to the Gamecocks to be the only 3-loss team in the top 25. So this is what I watch. These massive fleets of powerful ships floating aimlessly, rankings held up by random one-off wins over each other, and happily I cheer on Indiana's loss because it means that the fraudulent Big Ten is really no better than us after all. And each of our big teams getting a good quality win today would just cement us potentially getting 4, maybe even 5 teams in the playoffs. But that is when the first bomb fell. Amidst the destruction of the Hoosiers, Ole Miss was taking on one of the bottom feeders of the SEC. I am talking about Florida, a team that everybody was worried that their head coach wouldn't make it through the season after coming out to a paltry 4-5 start, falling in line with the upper echelon of SEC players by losing to A&M, Texas, and Georgia. But last week, they began to put their foot down. They began to roll, and the Gators rolled past LSU, knocking out a top 25 teams, weakening the schedule of many teams before coming in today to play against Ole Miss, who, oh no, needed that LSU team to be considered a quality loss for them. But Florida, with a glint in their eye, said, "Oh, you're looking for a quality loss?" and came out the gate swinging. They would get on board first against the Rebels, putting them on their back foot before Ole Miss would immediately score, pick off Florida, then score again. It looked like the tides may be turning, but that lasted only seconds, as in just 4 plays the Gators were back in the end zone while holding the ensuing drive by Ole Miss to a field goal that they missed. This would be the last scoring attempt of the half, as they would come out, go 3 and out, and say, "Call an ambulance, but not for me." The punt gets fumbled, Gators ball, Gators field goal. How's that quality loss feeling for you now, Rebels, as they turn it over on downs, have a quick punt off before, my God, 4 plays. Again, the Gators take the lead. The Rebels are forced to punt. Florida punts back. They begin to drive before Dart throws a pick. Florida punts it back, and 2 plays in a row, Dart throws the game away. My God, Ole Miss had fallen. A 3-loss team, definitely locked out of the playoffs, maybe even out of the top 25 by the Gators. And before you could even recover from this,
Sir, you may want to take a look at this. Georgia has allowed 21 points to UMass.
UMass? My God, that's hardly even a football team.
Yes, sir. They beat them handily, but this is the 3rd most amount of points scored against them.
The 4-15 slate didn't end the bloodshed. Vanderbilt falls to LSU. The bottom feeders were taking each other out, further weakening Alabama's losses. At least Texas handled their business at Kentucky, and Missouri was still beating up Mississippi State. At least one team knows how to stay in line. But now, with all the bloodshed that's gone on in the first half, we turned our eyes to the 7:30 slate. Alabama against Oklahoma, Auburn against Texas A&M. Now these two teams, they were supposed to be role players. Oklahoma lost to Tennessee, lost to Texas, lost to South Carolina, Ole Miss, and hell, even Missouri. And not just lost, but any team inside the top 20, they never scored more than 15 points. Hell, the most points they scored this year were against the other SEC bottom feeder in Auburn, where they put up just 27 points. And this Auburn team was bad. They lost to Cal, and then their SEC slate started and got mopped by Arkansas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. Their only SEC win so far had been against Kentucky, which isn't exactly something to write home about this season. So these teams needed to win tonight, but it would not start out pretty. Auburn comes out guns blazing. In 12 offensive plays, they score twice, then pick off A&M to go up 21-0 at the start of the second. Sure, A&M tries to fight and come back. They cut the lead down to 14, but this was a small consolation prize to the absolutely miserable start to this game. But a Shank Chapman punt sends A&M up near midfield, where they could end the half with a beautiful punt of their own down at the 1-yard line. But wait, the Aggies were going to try to rally. They were not waving the white flag. They start off with a score, force the 3-and-out, and one play, 73 yards of blown coverage later, and the SEC can be saved. And Auburn missed a field goal? Well, they hold A&M to a punt, then score. Then, across the rest of this game, they volley mistakes back and forth between picks, turnovers on downs, and punts, until Auburn, down 3, takes a couple of shots into the end zone in scoring range, fails, and kicks the field goal to take them to overtime. They trade with a pair of touchdowns and field goals to bring this out of regular overtime to 2-point shootouts. Auburn strikes first. Thorne to the back of the end zone. Texas A&M has to answer here. They move to the Wildcat. Direct snap. Pitch it back to the quarterback. He finds a wide open receiver. The pass is perfect, but it's dropped. The USS Tiger sinks. The Rebel One warship. My God. He was holding up half this division by being a quality loss for Missouri and LSU, and he just lost to a 1-5 conference team in the Auburn Tigers after getting brutalized by the Gamecocks a couple of weeks ago. Well, count them out of the playoffs. Good thing the USS Crimson oh, great heavens! Alabama was, dare I say, getting smacked? Sure, they got on the board first at the end of the first quarter and then held the Sooners to a missed field goal, but this Oklahoma defense completely stifled them outside of that first quarter. A total of 10 offensive yards in the second quarter, 0 points in the second half, and 3 interceptions. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma offense didn't have to do anything special if they wanted to win. Just sit back and watch Alabama go into critical failure and self-destruct like we have not seen in our lifetimes. They were held to 3 points for the first time in 20 years since a 20-3 South Carolina loss in 2004. And do you know how many other teams scored more than 3 points against the Sooners this year? All of them. Even their FCS team of Maine. So what does this mean? With a 3-loss Alabama team, Georgia's strength of schedule is now in the garbage. The only 1-loss SEC team is Texas, and they've beaten absolutely nobody while losing by 15 points to Georgia. Then you have Tennessee, who beat Alabama, sure, but lost to the bottom feeders of Arkansas, as well as losing to Georgia again by 2 scores, and Georgia, who lost by 18 to Ole Miss, who just lost to Florida. Everybody has bad losses. Few now have claims at being one of the most dominant teams in the conference, and a week ago we were asking ourselves how we could possibly narrow down this field to only 4 teams. Now we sit here wondering, can we even send 3 to the playoffs? The only hope on the horizon is one of the Blue Buds making the long trek to the championship and winning it. Otherwise, the SEC is doomed to be the rebirth of the Pac-12. The SEC has fallen.